Oh, hello, my lovely, and welcome to this week's episode of Lotus Life The Podcast. My name is Rose Tautari, and I, among many, many things in this lifetime, am a human design guide, a soul mentor, an author, and of course, a podcaster. And this is a show where each week we get to hang out and chat about all things human design. I'm here to teach you how you can thrive in your most aligned life by empowering yourself to understand your unique soul's purpose. Human design is a beautiful synthesis bringing together ancient wisdom and modern science, and is really a way of understanding the contract between your soul and the universe for who you came here to be, what you came here to do, and what karma you came here to correct this lifetime around. This podcast, Lotus Life, is a celebration of embodying the lotus flower that is incredible and blooms and thrives, growing from even the murkiest and muddiest of conditions in life. So get ready to lotus your life. This week, I am incredibly honored to have a soul sister joining me for a human design in real life IRL conversation with a beautiful being that I can't wait for you to meet, Nerys Whelan. And Nerys is the youngest ever cookbook author to be signed by her publisher here in New Zealand, and is the creatress behind The Keto Chef's Kitchen, which is a celebration of her incredible gifts in creating recipes from scratch from her background as a trained chef that's now coming to the fore in her own entrepreneurial empire that she's building, a complete kitchen alchemy, if you'd like, and also is an incredible powerhouse force who I work with personally behind the scenes in running my own business, which is how we first connected. And I legit don't know what I would do without this woman. Things like this podcast wouldn't happen if it wasn't for Nerys. So I am so excited to share this beautiful light in the world with you all in this episode. Nerys is a generator with emotional authority and a 6-2 profile, and this conversation is beautiful as we dive into the realities of what it feels like to begin to experiment with your human design in your day-to-day life, understanding where to start with your own self-development work, and a very honest chat about the realities of having a 2-line in your profile when you know your soul came here to do big things. It's raw, it's honest and real when it comes to how we can transform and reframe our fears as we grow as humans here in this lifetime. And I am so grateful for Nerys for sharing this part of her journey, as this is exactly what I've always been passionate about sharing on this podcast: the journey through the murky stuff in life, the process of rising and thriving, rather than skipping to the end and only talking about the highlights or the social media snapshot of the end result. So I just know you're going to love this episode, and just let's dive straight on in. So my lovely, first things first, if you are happy to share, I love to ask every guest that comes on the show how they started their day this morning. Run me right through it. Give me all the juicy details.
Oh, okay. This is interesting. So I get up early every morning. It's never been something that I enjoyed initially. It was something I started doing when I was working for a catering company. My background is cooking, and I was starting at like 3 or 5 in the morning. And that's when I kind of learnt about how much more productive I am throughout the whole day when I get up early. Yeah, I started implementing that into my life now as an entrepreneur, and it's just changed everything for me completely. So yeah, I got up early as I usually do, and I did like a quick 10-minute yoga, which I'm not always good at, but just going with when I feel like it and stuff. And I started working.
I mean, I know you're a real early riser, but by early, like define early for you.
So it depends how much I've got going on and like what time I got to sleep and stuff, but anywhere between 4 and 6 generally. Yeah.
Wow, you
Yeah.
you are such a powerhouse, and I love it. We're going to talk more about this anyway because it is so true what you say, that it's once you kind of experimented with it, that's when you were able to see how it lined up for you, rather
Yeah.
than taking on board, say, what somebody else told you you should do to be more productive or in flow.
Yeah.
You kind of, I love that you leaned into that by experimenting with it first for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just experimenting. For some people it might be the opposite, like at night for them, late at night, with, the whole world being asleep and having that quiet, like I live in centralish Auckland, and it's pretty noisy most of the time except the quiet hours of the night, whether that's early in the morning or late at night. That's when I'm the most productive for me. But some people thrive with a busy environment, so that's yeah. But that for me is huge. Yeah.
And I love that you gave yourself permission to go, actually, you know what, this is a routine that works for me, to give yourself that bit of time, like you say, with on the days that you roll out your yoga mat and start your day that way. And do you have any kind of daily rituals or other things like that are focused on yourself that you practice during at other times of the day? Like how does it look for you?
Yeah. I always have at least 5 minutes in the morning just to kind of be. I guess like I always just spend a few minutes, just noticing and acknowledging and appreciating the quiet that I have, because that's what I enjoy. And then the other time that I kind of feel like is always for me is in the shower. It's weird, like it sounds weird, it's not, but like just the same thing, just feeling the water and just taking a couple of minutes just to be there and feel how the water is, and just to kind of let everything else fade away. And that's kind of brings me a lot of peace. So like I shower at night, so that's last thing before I go to sleep and the first thing in the morning. And implementing that has changed a lot for me as well.
I love that, because that's quite intentional, right? That's a good
Mm,
mindfulness, sort of being in the now practice. And I mean, water, of course, is so cleansing anyway for our
mm,
energetic bodies, that's a really beautiful practice. And I think it's the littlest things, right, can be so powerful when they're done with intention,
yeah,
that it
yeah,
doesn't have
and
to be some fancy big routine or ritual that you do in your day.
yeah, and sometimes it is only just spending another 30 seconds in the shower before I hop out. But it's what you said, it's the intention, and
Mm.
that is what matters the most. And yeah.
Oh, I love that. And I love as well that we have such a fun WhatsApps between each other, because you know that you're up and doing things well before the rest of the world, or me are awake anyway. So we often have a bit of a laugh that you'll message me saying, I just waited until it was not such a ridiculous hour of the morning to start messaging you.
Yeah, yeah.
I know, and then I always sort of feel like I say to you that you probably feel like you've done an entire day's work by the time it's lunchtime, because you have.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like that time you're like, it was at 9 o'clock, and you're like, it's probably lunchtime for you now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
that's hilarious. So for everyone who's listening and who maybe hasn't come across you and your beautiful self and is meeting you for the first time here on the podcast, can you share a little bit about yourself?
yes. So I was brought up in Taranaki. I'm a Naki girl, and I left school early because I had a massive passion for food, and I knew I wanted to be a chef. And so I left school early and I started down that route, and I've been working as a chef for the last sort of 7, 8 years or something, going through really good restaurants to catering, as I mentioned before. And then sort of for the last 18 months just had this big like knowing in me that I wasn't built for this. Like I wasn't built for working for someone else. And as much as I love food, it wasn't feeding me. Pun there, didn't mean that. Um, it, being in the kitchen, 60, 70, 80 hours a week and working for someone else, I knew I needed to work for myself, and I knew I needed to do something more mentally challenging. And I've always loved, adapting recipes and making things, especially when it comes to dietaries, like I've always been the person in a restaurant that's like, oh, there's this weird dietary and they can't eat this, that, and the other, and all of this stuff. And they're like, Nerys, can you make something? And I just like thrive on the harder things, because that was the intellectual bit that I was missing. So I came across keto and I heard about it and I started reading about it. And I was like, wow, this is so interesting. Really low carb, high fat, moderate protein diet, and all of the amazing things that it does for your body and stuff. And so I thought I'd give it a crack and just fell in love with it. And the more I looked online and stuff, like when I started to do, sweets and that, all of the recipes I found were just average at best. So I started making my own keto recipes and that, and I was like, wow, this is fucking amazing. Like, I really like it. And then I went to this keto cafe and I was like, oh, these are going to be great. And then I tried their sweets and stuff and I was like, damn, I think mine are better. So then, like, not trying to be up myself, but I genuinely thought they were better. And people that had tried my stuff, everyone was like amazed. And I'd feed it to my family without them knowing it's keto, and they'd love it, and then I'd tell them and they wouldn't believe me. So so that's when I launched my website with a bit of a push from my sister Angharad. She's been absolutely fundamental in my development personally and professionally as well. And I kind of joked about it and she was like, you have to. And so my partner Scott as well, he's amazing. He's so supportive. Like, I kind of said it in jest, like, oh, I should just start a website. And he was like, you should. And the generator responding thing, once a couple of people had told me that I should, I leapt into it and I started my website, and it started taking off. And I've had so much feedback from people, like loving all of the recipes and stuff. And then the same similar thing, I joked about writing a cookbook, a keto cookbook, and then everyone just told me to go for it, and I did. And I reached out to a publisher, a small New Zealand publisher, Mary Egan Publishing, and I filled in like a application form just to see if it's something they would be interested in. And generally publishers take 3 to 4 months to get back to you, and like the next business day I had an email from them saying like, how fast can you get it done?
Whoa.
Yeah, it was a pretty special moment. I'd been doing the cookbook for a while, but then with lockdown, the restaurant I was working in shut, obviously, and I was up every day between 2 and 4 a.m. just working on the cookbook, and did probably 80% of it during level 4, and finished it and submitted it to the publisher. So I've got to go through this weekend actually and just do the final proof that they sent through to me, just double check everything before it gets indexed, and then it's off to the printer. I'm so excited.
Oh, and I think we were talking about this during lockdown, that you were saying that it's kind of being timed to not compete with the Christmas rush, right? It's really supportive from your publisher to say, hey, look, we know that this is something that's really like going to be a staple for people.
So what my publisher told me was that it will be printed before Christmas, and I'll be selling it on my website pre-Christmas, but it won't be in the bookshops until probably March next year. And that's just because at Christmas there's so many books that go in to bookshops, and within the first 90 days or 100 days or something, if you don't sell X amount, then they discontinue having it in the shop. So it's better to wait a little bit, but it will still be available hopefully before Christmas.
Yes, which is beautiful. I love that you've got that option to sort of sell through your own avenue. And then you've also got the follow through with the ability to be in your more conventional wide distribution option, because
Yeah.
you say, rather than it just being on a list of things that people buy and maybe look at once at Christmas time, it's much more intentional. It comes back to that intention, right? That it's the
Yeah.
universe lining it up to go, no, we want this to be something that is, you know, people with heart and intention are buying it, rather than just
Mm.
because it's a stocking filler at Christmas time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh,
Definitely.
and it's so exciting. That is so, I love
Uh,
when we get a chance to talk about this, because it is, as you say, I bet there was days when you were getting up so early doing catering work or working for someone else, that
yeah.
now it was hard to imagine what life would be when you were able to completely create your own creative outlet.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, when I was catering and I was getting up that early to work for someone else, obviously, I was doing it and stuff, and I enjoyed how much I got done before, 9 a.m. sort of thing. But on the flip side, like when I get up that early for myself and for my business, it's completely different. Like, I'm not good at waking up. Most of the time, I don't wake up from my alarm. I wake up because my partner, like, pushes me and tells me to get out of bed because he's sick of my alarm. But when I'm out of bed and the process, and actually the thing that makes me get up is, I love what I do, and that's a huge thing. Mm.
Yeah, and that's probably a beautiful segue into what I wanted to ask you about next, because obviously you are a generator energy type and you have your beautiful emotional authority going on as well. And so
Mm.
I just wanted to ask if you can talk a little bit more about how your kind of growth in understanding that, like embodying that on your journey with kind of understanding and putting human design into practice in your life, just how that's kind of looked for you, because obviously it goes, I love talking
Mm.
about the fact how this, and you're the same in that it goes across just your business, it's into your life, like there are so many avenues that it
Mm.
comes into.
Yeah, definitely. So I first heard about human design through my sister Angharad, who's also my one-on-one coach, and I'm her VA. We have a very dynamic relationship, which is beautiful. But she introduced me to human design, and at first I was like, oh, is this a bit woo-woo for me? I'm not sure. And then the more I learned about it, the more I was like, oh wow, yep, no, that's me. Yep, no, I can't deny that. And at first it was kind of just like understanding it was the first thing, and then once I started integrating it into everything, it's changed so much for me. Like, especially the emotional authority was huge for me to integrate
Mm,
and understand, because I used to just make spur of the moment decisions, and making decisions in the high or the low, and then getting back to neutral and being like, oh, why did I decide that? I can do way more. Or,
mm,
oh, why did I decide that? I can't do that. Like when I've reached my low, if I made that decision at the high, and kind of tracking it, I'm still getting there, but I know that I'm quite neutral when I wake up in the morning, and then I'm pretty sure my cycle is about 24 hours with my emotional
mm,
wave.
mm,
Yeah. So I think that's why I work so well in the morning as well. But yeah, the emotional wave was huge for me to understand and integrate.
mm.
And now when I make decisions, I have so much more confidence in them because of that. When I make them at that sort of neutral point.
Yeah. For those who
So
don't know, anyone who's got emotional authority, it comes and goes like a wave pattern all the time. And essentially your way of making that decision with your, I guess, like sacral gut voice that is always aligned for you has to come from that part where you're in that cool, calm, collected kind of neutral stage of the wave, rather than, like you're saying, being swept up in the high or down in the
mm,
low, which is never going to be in alignment, making a
yeah.
decision from there. Yeah. Saying that's so powerful to know that about yourself, because it's such a permission slip, right? That you can
Yeah.
finally trust the moments that are the aligned decisions in your life.
Mm, yeah, definitely. definitely. I mean, I'm only still scratching the surface. Like, the more I learn about my design, the more it's so fascinating. Like, I don't know if you can ever really stop learning about human design, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
My partner is a projector, and he has none of his motors defined, so he's, really low energy. But in saying that, he's a chef as well, and he works crazy amounts of hours and runs like 60 kilometers a week and goes to the gym, and I don't know how he does it for him.
Mm-hmm.
But outside of doing those things, he is very low energy. I think probably he burns himself out a little bit, but he loves it, so I don't
Yeah.
know.
It's sort of, that's the projector thing, is kind of knowing you've got energy, but you use it in the places that I guess are efficient for you. But then you do need that huge amount of downtime to recharge your batteries, which is kind of at the other end of the scale compared to you.
Yeah, it's like at night it gets to a certain point where I'm like, okay, I can sleep now. And he's just, like, most nights I probably, like, I fall asleep within minutes, and he kind of annoys him a little bit because he just wants to be able to do that, but he needs to, like, wind down and read a book or flick through Facebook or something and just chill out for a little bit before he can switch off, kind of. But for me, I'm like, okay, I'm done now, like, that's it.
Yeah, batteries are drained. I'm happy.
Yeah.
I'm asleep now. I'll see you at 4 a.m.
Yeah. Well, no, he does not get up early, but yeah. Yeah.
I love that. And it's such a powerful tool to know that that's your energy dynamic. And I think you've spoken to me before how at times he's sort of gone, oh my gosh, can you just like fucking slow down? Like you're making me exhausted, or like feel guilty that you're always on the go.
Yeah.
And it's just that permission to go, well, you just have a different way of showing up. It's not that it's worse or anything.
Yeah. So because of that does happen quite a lot. And so that's another reason why I like doing a lot in the mornings when he's still asleep. I'm a bit more conscious now that I understand that, because before I understood human design, when he would say things like that, I'm like, what are you talking about? Just don't look if it stresses you out. Like, but now I try and make sure that I've set aside time each day for us just to chill out, and whatever that looks like for us, on the day. I do try, and it's like I feel like an addict sometimes. I'm like, I work while he's not here, and then I hide it all so it doesn't stress him out, but so
like sneaking it in behind the scenes.
yeah. Or like he'll go out and I'm like, right, okay, let's do it all now.
That's hilarious. It's like, that's such a funny way, like sneaking around doing work and business.
Yeah. Not actually, you know what I mean? But if I've got a lot to do, then that's what I resort to sometimes.
But I think that, when we talk about all of these things with like awareness and self-awareness and things, it's actually a gift, because you're saying, well, actually I love you and care about you, so I do want to just like dive in and go like, all in on this for a short burst of time, so that I can create that space in my day when we can have connection time or time around each other that isn't going to make you feel like you need to be keeping up or doing something. So it's really beautiful. And as you say, it's like life. I think with human design, it can just, like, you can keep learning and experimenting with it forever, basically, because there's so many different nuances. And it was interesting that you said about the motor centers before, because I know this is something we've kind of touched on a little bit, that you have got a hell of a lot of definition in your design. You're all defined except the head center. Is that right? Yeah. Do you know much about it, like to speak to it, or how do you feel like that shows up for you in your life, having that much definition?
I mean, for me, I've delved more into my undefined head center, because I know that means I can talk myself out of things a lot and things like that. So kind of just being more conscious about that. I know that I've got all of my motives defined and stuff, and everything else on my chart is defined. And I'm sort of slowly going into what that looks like for me. But for some reason, I wanted to start with, the
Yeah,
open head stuff.
yeah. No, I think
Yeah.
that's really powerful, because it's sort of going, well, where am I? I always hate to use the word most vulnerable, but it is
Yeah.
where you are open to the world, and especially if you've got all, because I like to describe it that everywhere you've got that definition is basically like your little energetic buffer. So you've got so much of a buffer going on throughout the rest of you. Like, I think that's really empowering to go, okay, let's work with the bit that needs kind of the most nourishment, the most nurturing. Yeah, because
Yeah.
that's gonna always be a place where you can give yourself more self-care, basically, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely,
Mm,
definitely.
mm.
And the episode you did on the spleen and the fear gates, that was very interesting for me, because I have a yeah, it was really good. Like, I'd heard about them, but I hadn't actually looked into them properly. And so when I was listening to that, I have a subconscious fear of the future, which is not subconscious. I've been aware of it my whole life. One of my first memories that I remember is being shit scared of change in general. Like,
Mm,
changing classes, I would get the worst stomach aches, and I just couldn't deal with it. It was so scary for me, and I've always sort of had that. I feel like now that I've always been aware of it. Now I understand why. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. But that was really interesting. And what else did I have?
like kind of fear of authority, or like putting other people on pedestals is kind of
Mm,
your other one there. So it's
mm,
like almost like seeing yourself as like powerless compared to other people.
yeah, yeah. Not so much, I'd say, fear of authority, but yeah, like putting other people above me, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah.
A
So it's
lot.
kind of like
Yeah,
seeing yourself as separate from other people. Like, oh well, they've got their shit together. They know what they're doing. I'm never going to be able to get to that point. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, for
Mm.
sure.
Yeah, it's so interesting, isn't it? And I think what's interesting about that story, about when you were saying that, when you were little, looking back now that you were having stomach aches and things, and of course that's pretty a direct correlation to like your sacral, your gut kind of telling
Mm,
like, I'm not okay with this, or this doesn't
yeah.
feel right, and manifesting in the physical symptoms, which is so fascinating when you start to get into that, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. And with my not self thing being frustration, I've understood that for a long time, but it never made as much sense to me as it did a few weeks ago. I was frustrated, and I was on the phone to my sister, and I was like, oh, this is so frustrating, but it just makes no sense that I'm so frustrated about this. And she's like, okay, if you weren't frustrated about that, what would you be frustrated about? Oh, probably this. Okay, so if you weren't frustrated about that, what would you be frustrated about? And like, just peeling back all of these layers and realizing that I was actually frustrated about something, 10 steps before, and going, oh, okay, now this makes so much sense. And just like, even just understanding that that's why your not self theme is coming up. And it's the same for anyone, like any not self theme, I guess. Like, if you've got
Mm.
was projected bitterness, right? So if you're really bitter about something, but it doesn't make sense, peeling that back and going, okay, if I wasn't bitter about that, what would be annoying me? And
Yeah.
that process, doing that is, yeah, it's beautiful. It's crazy,
Yeah.
crazy what comes up.
Yeah, it's almost like doing an energetic audit of all the places in your life
Yeah.
that are maybe out of alignment or have drifted out of alignment and you didn't realize. And then, as you say, all of a sudden, for you, particularly as a generator, that sense of frustration is just like permeating through so many different things. But
Mm,
it's peeling it back to get to the core of what is out of alignment for you, so that you can, yeah, basically take the steps to get everything back on track again, like
yeah.
to start saying no to the things that you've maybe said yes to that shouldn't have been
Mm,
yeses, or yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Definitely.
It's
definitely.
it's just it gets so deep. It's so incredible. And I
Mm,
wanted to just touch on for you as well, because you've got your heart center or your ego center defined, which
mm,
is all to do with that kind of having that willpower, that drive, that motivation that comes through consistently each day. And
mm,
certainly for you, there's that motivation that's interesting, because it's kind of at odds with what you're saying with the fear of like the future and that role of kind of like stepping into the light, so to speak. But you've got that drive within you that is kind of to do with being seen, right? You've got that driving
mm,
motivation factor that is kind of all to do with having some sort of role, being out in the world, being seen, like being a bit of a household name, like so it's, and I know you've spoken to me before about the fact that you've had other readings that have kind of said to you, like, hold your horses here, because you are going to be big someday, girl.
yeah, yeah, that was a bit crazy, yeah. And she, yeah, the whole time she was just like, your whole life is success. It's just crazy. And she pulled like 9 cards, and 7 of them were success related, or it was
Yeah.
insane. I don't particularly like the idea. Well, I do. Like, of course, I want my, like I want my business to do well, but I don't necessarily. I don't want to be famous. I don't want that. Like, I don't. I don't want to be walking down the street and somebody knows who I am. I quite like privacy on some level. On that,
Yeah,
I want.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But it's
But yeah, it is.
interesting, isn't it? Because it's so many of these things that we then have to kind of peel back and unpack and go, well, okay, what is the definition of success that feels, you know, like it's not comfortable, or, and because I've had to do
Mm,
this often myself, like with my own self-development process, to kind of get out of my own way and go,
mm,
what part of my business, say growing or expanding, or finding that sort of, quotation, air quotes, success, am
mm.
I hiding from, and why, and where did the story come from that can't be sort of, I guess, seen and successful, but also have your privacy. It's such
Yeah.
an interesting kind of rabbit hole to go down, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I mean, like, I would love for the Keto Chef's Kitchen brand to be big,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
I don't necessarily. But then equally, like in this day and age, especially with businesses like this, or just businesses in general, people want to know the name behind a brand, and people a lot of the time support a business because they like the person that runs it or behind it, like they like the
yeah.
face of it, and that sells a lot. I don't want to be disconnected from my brand. I still want to be part of it, but
Mm, mm.
you know,
And
I
I
mean, also I give my brand credibility, I guess, like because I am a
Yeah,
chef, and
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And it's so interesting, isn't it? Because your profile is the 6'2", isn't it?
Mm,
Yeah, we're 6'2" twins. So it's
yeah,
kind of that, and I think a lot of that comes into play with having that profile a little bit, because
definitely.
there's that pressure there to be this sort of exemplary person, this role
Yeah,
model, this, sort of being aware that everyone's kind of very much observing what you're doing. But the underlying too of that kind of, I just want to have my own space and I quite enjoy my solitude. And
yeah. Actually, it's funny because I understand the 6'2" profile, but I hadn't linked that to what I was just talking about until you just said it. That's
Mm,
makes so much more sense to me now, because before I've been like, why am I feeling like this? Like,
yeah,
yeah. Oh, it's crazy.
yeah, it's
Yeah, that
it's
makes so
really
much sense.
incredible, isn't it? How it all kind of intertwines and holds hands with
Mm,
the way it shows up in your own life. Because there's and this is why I love it so much, because there's not just one black and white. If you've got this in your chart, this is how it shows up for you. There's so many
mm,
nuances and ways it can interact, and then the more kind of you dive into it and get comfortable with it, it probably evolves again in the way it shows up. Because I think it's very much, all these things start to very easily sort of, I guess, not affect the way we go about doing our purpose, but it is so easy for that profile that kind of, I like to call it like the clothing your soul kind of chose to come here with, like to go, hey, I'm going to carry out my purpose, but this is what I'm going to wear while I'm doing it.
Yes.
And it's that sort of self-inflicted pressure to go, okay, I have to do this to a high standard because the world is watching me, but at the same time I do really love having my own space, my quiet time. And it's that deep level of going, I know for myself, I've always had a real kind of aversion to what you could call like the trappings of fame. I've never resonated with that myself. And so I think it is very much that redefining what success and fame as it's aligned for you, isn't it?
Yeah.
I know. I think the 6'2" profile is definitely one that you can really go deep on, because of course you've got your that whole process of like the first 30 years going through all the trial and error that leaves you with a whole lot of inner child issues to unpack.
Yeah.
A whole lot of inner child healing along the way.
Yeah, definitely. It's so interesting because it's such a juxtaposition, It really is. But it's beautiful as well, but it's finding the balance between the two, I guess,
Yeah. And I love that, as you say, you've been able to take those lived experiences and go, well, okay, that was my training ground. That was my opportunity to develop my skills, develop my methodologies, kind of flex those muscles and learn through that kind of experience of going, okay, if you'd never tried that career as a chef, you needed to go through that to get to where you are now.
Oh, definitely. Like I don't regret what I've done at all. Like it's shaped who I am. I love food. I love cooking. That was so right for me. It was still right for me. I just was just too headstrong to be working for other people, and I needed that creative autonomy, I guess.
Yeah.
Everything I've done, I know, has been so right, and it's made me who I am. And I've learned so much over my career in different kitchens, working for different people, and the stuff that I've been able to do in my career it still amazes me. I don't know if you know this, I represented New Zealand in a culinary competition, it's not a very well-known competition, but it's not like it's a very well-known competition in the industry. It's kind of like, it's like the Olympics for cooking. It's like real MasterChef, but much more intense. That was 2016, the first year New Zealand ever competed. And yeah, it was a huge thing. I was in, the same room as a lot of the best chefs in the world, and it was one of the most incredible experiences I've ever had. Yeah, it was amazing. It's called Boku Store if anyone wants to look it up.
Wow, I love that.
Yeah.
That's incredible. No, I did not know that about you, but that I can totally see, because it is, as you say, it's that thriving in that creative flair with being able to express, because I think that's what's so hard. And I know from myself, my own experience in the hospitality industry, is that you have so many really good cooks and chefs who have got that creative passion, but the format that you have to stick to within a business that is either a cafe or a restaurant is often so at odds with that creativity. Because it has to be consistent. It has to be the same thing. It has to be the same recipes, and being aware of budgets and, food supplies and stocks and things. So yeah, I can totally understand when you say that it wasn't giving you that autonomy to be creative. Yeah, it's very interesting. And I think it's so interesting for you as well, because in your chart, you've got that linkage between your ajna, your mind, and the throat center, and it's that ability for you that you've just got within you that is kind of all to do with, like, this is me creating my own methodology. You've got that within you of going, I know what it is that I want or to share, and here's the information to back it up, and I'm gonna kind of be able to kind of share with you this whole thing added to your creativity that you've got. It's incredible, because I think that way you've gone about it with having a cookbook and that niche is just such a perfect expression of what you came here to do in this lifetime.
Yeah, it just everything about it just it fits so well with me, and I'm not, I'm not claiming to be someone with insane willpower that's 100% keto all of the time, because I'm obsessed with chocolate and I have issues. But for me, I do what feels right for me, and if that means that I want to go out for dinner and I want to eat garlic bread, I'll go eat garlic bread. Or I want to have a glass of wine with my friends. But that's what kind of scares me about the fame thing, because I'm, if I was to be recognized and somebody saw me eating ice cream on the beach, that's what worries me. And I think, isn't the fear of judgment also, fear of authority always kind of judgment as well?
Yeah, there's so many layers to it, right? And I think particularly in the era we're in, right, we have all seen so many examples of people who are kind of put up on these pedestals, and then the minute they're seen to be a human, it's the cancel culture or the call out culture or whatever that comes behind it. And as you say, it's like being known for your passions and your talent more than just being defined by like the label on your cookbook, I think is, and that's so much of, I guess, the world needs more people who are able to say, hey, I'm a nuanced human being. I can be a cookbook author with several different cookbooks out there. It doesn't behold you to just being the living embodiment of one particular thing all the time. Which I would say is probably the whole role model line coming through again as well, isn't it? It's that sort of, oh my gosh, like I know everybody's watching me being this exemplary, like living example of someone who is practicing keto. But it's the human experience, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm always kind of been in two minds. Like I haven't shared anything on my sort of business page about anything not keto, because I'm in two minds, because equally on one side of it I want to be like, hey, yeah, I ate ice cream last night or whatever, but on the other side, if people have been really good and really strict, I don't want to be the thing that makes them go off the rails with it and stay off the rails for 3 weeks because they ate ice cream too. Do you know? So that's why I kind of haven't shared anything about it. But then equally, I'm like, if there comes a point when somebody calls me out because they saw me eating dumplings on Dominion Road, then,
those dumplings were fucking well worth it.
Yeah. I mean, Barilla dumplings on Dominion Road, guys, that is the best.
It's so much to kind of unpack, isn't it, within your own growth and development as part of that human experience, because it is it's I think you're so right in saying that it's an incredibly difficult road to kind of navigate when it comes to social media and how you show up as a sort of, as you say, the kind of human behind the cookbook or the brand or the company. And part of that, I think I've learned a lot along my journey, is being able to share the human moments, the stuff that is the mess. And I actually was talking to someone about this earlier today, that it's hard to sometimes feel like sharing the what we look at ourselves and call the mess or the imperfect stuff, because we're holding ourselves as that role model to such a high bar, and it's like the rest of the world isn't, but we're doing it to ourselves.
I think I'll probably always hold myself to a higher standard than I hold other people, and it's just like I am quite self-critical, and sometimes, like with creating these keto recipes and stuff, sometimes I'll try something like the cookies, for instance, it's probably took me about 9 or 10 times adapting it before I was happy with it. But the times when I make things and I'm like, I can't get it, and I might have a meltdown or whatever, and I'll get my partner to try it, and I trust his opinion because he's a chef as well, but he's very critical, and he doesn't eat keto, like he's not keto, and he'll try something and he's like, oh, that's like he's like, it's not exactly right, but in terms of keto, it's probably as close as you're going to get. Like, chemically with baking and stuff, it's so hard. But I love the challenge. Sometimes I hold myself to such a high standard that I think I'm going to be able to make something that tastes exactly the same when it's probably not going to.
Yeah.
It's
got its own variation or nuance to it, rather than being a faithful replica. But when you've sort of got the skills to get 99.9% of the way there, I know that's like the chef's biggest kind of dream, isn't it? To make everything sing when it comes together. And,
definitely.
And it's such a beautiful creative expression as well, to be able to say, hey, this is you bringing all your gifts and talents together and creating something that is, and it goes beyond just necessarily being for people who follow keto, so to speak, or use it in their life. Because I know for me personally, I've been gluten-free and dairy-free for a very long time for health reasons. And often things like keto recipes are actually really fantastic to adapt, because they're not using flours and things that are the traditional baking ingredient. So myself, I find it really helpful.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the other thing, I guess, as well, with it's not just keto, it's gluten-free, sugar-free, low carb in general, and those are huge markets. It's a huge market, if you look beyond the label of keto.
Exactly. Probably every projector out there would be going, we're so sensitive to everything. I love that. And I just really appreciate you coming and sharing with that honesty of saying, as you're on this journey, because I think it's so powerful to share the stories of what it's like to be in the journey, rather than there's so many interviews and podcasts and YouTubes out there that talk about it from the end result. And I think it's so powerful to be able to get in and share these real life, moments and situations and thoughts that we have as we're going through our own process and journey and getting there. So I just really am so incredibly grateful for you coming and sharing today. And I feel like we could talk forever about this. So great for you. So just before we finish up, I would love if you could share how people can connect with you, where they can find you, and are you taking pre-orders for your cookbook?
Oh, so the pre-orders not yet. I will be doing pre-orders on my website once, probably a few weeks after it goes to print, because it'll take like 12 to 14 weeks from when we send it off to the printer. So probably looking to pre-orders starting maybe in like a month or something.
Amazing.
Yes, so if you want to find me, I am on Instagram and Facebook, just the Keto Chef's Kitchen, and my website is theketochefskitchen.com.
Lovely, love that. And of course we'll link everything up with the show notes for this episode, where you can find you online. And just massive hugs to you for being happy to come on and share your journey.
Thank you so much for having me.
And that generator sparkle. I know there'll be a lot of people out there going, oh my God, to only have a sacral life force energy that you've got going on.
Thank you so much, Rose.
Amazing. Bye.
Bye.
Wow. My cup was so full after having that conversation, and I just hope you loved it as much as I did to record. It was so much fun to sit down and chat and flick on the microphone while we were talking. So I just am so delighted to be able to share this conversation with you. Nerys is a wonderful, incredible being of light in my life, so I've been looking forward to sharing this with you since we first decided we were going to sit down and record together. So I just, as always, human design is just such an incredible lens to use. It's a tool to have in your back pocket. It is an experiment to constantly be playing with and having fun with in your own life. And I hope that this episode gave a little snapshot into that, how it can really be a process of empowering yourself with knowledge that doesn't have to always be necessarily the thing you're doing in life. You know, I think sometimes when we find out about things like human design or astrology, you know, we sometimes feel a pressure that it's got to be really, really front and center of everything, but essentially it's taking it and alchemizing it into your life so that it is just part of who you are. It's part of how you go about your day. It doesn't have to be something that is so heavy in its approach and its use. It's just fun, it's playful, it's lighthearted, it's joyful, and that's what I really am passionate about, sharing and empowering other people with this knowledge for, so that they can integrate the fun of this and the relief and the permission that comes with understanding your true self, so that it's not something heavy to carry around. It's something that really just allows you to polish off and shine who you truly are and who your soul truly came here to be. So I just love that we've been able to have this chat as a generator with emotional authority, you know, to bring that to you. Also the 6-2 profile, which, as we mentioned in the episode, is my profile as well. So it's always so much fun to sit and chat with other people who you can compare those lived experiences, because at the end of the day, that is what kind of integrates with it all as well, that all of our lived experiences are a lens that we look through and we work with in this lifetime as well. So as always, just enormous virtual hugs through the microphone. I hope you loved this episode. If you really got something out of it, please feel free to share it and tag me if you're screenshot or sharing it in your stories. I love seeing just the aha moments, and when people really connect with something that has been said or someone's story. I just get so many happy dances are going on in my studio when I hear about things like that, or when you DM me about those moments as you're listening along. And if you haven't already, please feel free to come and join our Facebook community private group where we chat about all things human design each week. It's called Lotus Life The Podcast, Human Design with Rose Tautari. There's a link in the show notes with this episode if you'd love to come and join us. And as always, take care of yourself, sending you so much love through the microphone, and I will see you on the next episode.